The Medical Amateur Radio Council has been in existence since 1966. We often talk about medical radio subjects on the air. Today, we're talking about a ham radio related subject, portable radio operations. We are making a Zoom recording so we can share this later on the Healthcare Hams channel. We encourage everyone that's on 20 meters to be involved in the roundtable discussion. We can't, your video and audio will be on Zoom, will be part of it. If you're on Zoom, though, you need to be a general or above for me to involve you. I've got a couple of additional check-ins here. I've got KD6, ECP, Bob Smith. I have a long K4 AAC, and I have some of you may need to mute your microphone. Right now, I also have Andy, AJ8B. Thank you, Andy, for being here with us today. Any additional check-ins on 20 meters? Make your call. I've got Bill, KC9CS. Thank you for everybody that's here today. I look forward to hearing about your portable operations. I'm going to let Bob Ponder have the mic first, but before we do, Bob, I see we have K1 DCA with us too. So thank you, Don, for being here with us. Operating portable in the past with older equipment involved quite a bit of a challenge. Maybe the equipment, maybe the antennas. It's changed a lot through the years. You know, a lot of us, when we grew up in the 1950s and 60s and some before, we had more property. Things, homes were bigger, properties were bigger. That's not necessarily true today or in the future. We're going to involve young people in amateur radio. Portable operations are going to have to be an important part of that. And I see we have another check in here. We have Bernie, KD5QHV. And we're going to talk about that in the context of health as well. I mean, obviously, being in, you're a DXer and you're chasing DX all day long and you're consumed by it, and you never leave your room. That's not exactly a healthy hobby. But going out and doing portable operations certainly changes the equation. If you choose to do POTAs, the potential for going out in the park, bringing a family member along, getting your 10 contacts, 20 contacts, and then doing recreation. That's also would be much more attractive to younger amateurs. We've got individuals that just don't have the room for HF equipment. This gets them the opportunity to do both ham radio, recreation, and family time all at the same time. So at this time, we have somebody to talk about their experiences in the past, their presence, and we're going to let Bob. Let's make sure, Bob, that your screen share is on because I don't see it right now. K4RLC. Go ahead and let's test your screen share. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, it says I'm sharing it here. You're not seeing the PowerPoint.
No, I'm not seeing it here on Zoom.
Let's try it again. Let me try it again here.
Yeah.
How about now?
Okay.
It says people can see
I see it.
WJ. Yeah, I see it. WJB.
Okay, we do have on the Zoom side Bob Conder, K4RLC, sharing the screen. So, Bob, I'll let you go ahead and take the mic and tell us all about what you've done, and why, and how, and how much you enjoy it. Go ahead, K4RLC, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta.
Okay, J Whiskey 5 Bravo Delta. This is Bob, Kilo 4, Romeo Lima Charlie, right now in South Carolina. And Jay and I talked a little bit about this. Also, I want to thank Jay for the dental consult yesterday. Looks like I'm going to have a root canal when I get back to Raleigh. The clindamycin 300 TID, it took about a day to kick in. I was ready to just yank the molar out last night, but I feel much better, and you can probably see the sagging. Anyway, portable stuff. Well, I don't know. Before this, I was a wilderness backpacker and rock climber. I've always enjoyed being outdoors, and when I played around with radio, ham radio in the 60s, not much portable stuff, but when I got relicensed again in the late 1990s, the first thing was I want to get outside. This is the QSL this is the beach about 300 yards south of here. And I thought, okay, well, how can I do it? And I started with an Elenco HF transmitter, the DX70. The Elenco doesn't make them anymore. This is an inverted V for 20 meters on a fishing pole lashed to our kid's little Tykes wagon. The battery was a lawnmower battery from Walmart, a lead acid battery that weighed about 5 pounds per amp, and a little table and a chair and umbrella. This was in September, and for several years I did this. Now the beach now is really grown, and it's a year-round place, so I can't put that big antenna on the beach. I used to have the kids at one end keeping people from walking into it, and even though we had streamers and stuff. But this started, this was over 26 years ago. To the right, sorry, this is just a snapshot from QST. Talk about getting kids involved. There are a couple of ways to do. One, Kids Day is the Saturday before Field Day. Field Day is a wonderful way to learn about portable operations. If you've never done it, you can go to ARL and they'll tell you where your nearest club is. And even if you don't want to operate, go out and see the setup. And most of the time, you show up.
Let me pause one. Is anybody else seeing the presentation? Because I'm getting some reports. We see Bob. Well, I don't see the screen share. Andy, AJAB, do you see the screen share? The screen?
Yes, I do.
I see it also.
Okay, QSL. Thank you. I'll let you continue, Bob.
Okay.
LLC, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Jay, I don't know what to do.
No, it says you're okay. You're okay. Go ahead.
Okay, this is K4LC. The right, this was Kids Day is another way to get kids involved. Jay and I were talking yesterday about two things, kids and disasters. And you don't really want to be involved in disasters, but it's a good way to learn emergency and portable operations. I don't have the slides for this, but I did disaster work right after Hurricane Katrina, but in Gulfport and Biloxi, that whole section of Mississippi was just destroyed. All communications were down, and ham radio came in and set up portable stations. ARL sent crates of stuff that we were using down there. But anyway, how do you get kids involved? Kids Day is the Saturday before Field Day, and it's a really good way if you've got some connection to show kids ham radio. This is the same beach, and this is the same. It's a Elenco, a MFJ tuner. I've got a battery box that jump starts a car, an umbrella, the same antenna, and these are my kids. 25 years ago, Lauren with the mic, Bobby with the CW key. The cool thing with this, with Kids Day, W5RRR, the Johnson Space Center, the place where they train astronauts in Houston, was on the air. And Kent, who unfortunately is a silent key now, talked to Bobby. Bobby was 6 years old, got on the mic and talked to him. And Kent was saying, keep your eyes on the stars, follow your dreams, just wonderful stuff. And then when Bobby got off, he said, I talked to a spaceman, even though Kent was just trained astronauts, he didn't. And then later on, Kent followed up with a bunch of really good scientific stuff they sent to Bobby. So I sent this to QST, and they thought, oh, this is great. Look at this. It's portable. You're on a beach. You got your kids, and you're doing STEM stuff. So any of you, this is the Saturday, I think June 20th before Field Day, have a way to get kids involved with ham radio. This is a cool way to do it. Boy Scouts, church groups, things like kids in your neighborhood, and it's a great way. The kids, they're not as active. They did a lot of public service stuff, and right now, Lauren has a PhD in health psychology. Bobby's got a master's in accounting and works in corporate banking in Charlotte. But they just got relicensed. Their licenses are good until 2036. So, and it actually helped. They put it on their college applications for UNC Carolina, a very competitive school. And the admissions office said, we don't see kids with ham radio licenses, but it set them aside. So, You don't want to think about that. But anyway, that was kids portable and a good thing to do. Let's see. Okay, water portable operations. Well, almost anything that's not in your home shack. You can be on your sun deck. You can be in your backyard. You can be at a park. Basically, not operating on AC grid, but solar or generator. Most of the time, portable folks now are on solar. It can be your same equipment modified or better suited. And basically, the portable stuff, we're going to divide it into two large categories: the QRP, which is 10 watts or less, let's say that, or QRO around 100 watts. Not many people carry big flex. Wow, yeah, the big. Ooh.
Go ahead. I think we got.
Thank you, Jay. But basically, they're hardcore QRPers. I've got QRP stuff I've done and have taken it internationally. St. Lucia, where we were with Jay and some Marco folks a few years ago, as well as strange places like Estonia, Finland, and then last year in Iceland. So most of the people, I mean, you can just take your, they'll take their ICOM 7300 to a park. So you want a radio that does your bands of interest, and most of this is going to be HF. I still use my old 706. Jay, mine has filters, CW filters, not like we had on Grand Cayman. The Yaesu FT891 is sort of the iPhone for POTA. POTA is Parks on the Air, and just a brief description. Parks on the Air started with the 100th anniversary of the National Park System, and it has just snowballed as a great way to get people interested in ham radio, portable operations, and a lot of CW stuff, although I do about 98, 99% CW. Most people will do sideband. So if you need a
Bob, just for ID purposes.
yes, sir.
Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. That's K4RLC at the microphone. We're talking about portable operations in ham radio today. We're going to have additional check-in time later, and at 20 meters, we'll have the opportunity for all amateurs to discuss their portable operations, past, present, and future. Bob is telling us about his right now, giving a lot of very wise recommendations. And Bob, you'll be proud of me because I'm headed to see Chip in New Orleans tomorrow, and I'll be at his house by Tuesday. And guess what I have with me? I have two laptops, a Yaesu 891 and a Yaesu 991 to configure for portable operations. And so, Bob, when you talked about emergencies, that also, fills in as a go kit for emergencies as well. So I didn't realize how in sync we were. I'm turning the mic back to you. K4RLC, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta, operating out of Florida. Go ahead, Bob.
Whiskey 5 Bravo Delta K4. So Jay, you're state of the art, and there are a lot of sites around where Chip is that you can go out if you want to do POTA stuff. Not many mountains around the Delta down there. And I'm also the co-moderator for the Portable Operations Forum for the Long Island CW Club, and been doing this for years. So I just wanted to try to give a short overview of the issues, and maybe we can work on this longer. But basically a tuner, an antenna, and a lot of these subjects we could go on for an hour just on each one. A lot of times if you don't have a tuner, you want a resonant antenna. And the antennas can be vertical or wire. I don't like wires. I've operated a lot on mountain faces where there's no place for a wire. So I use a miniature screwdriver coil or a whip. And for wires, you're either going to use an end-fed half wave or an end-fed random wire. A half wave for 40 meters is going to be 66 feet long. That's a lot of wire. And you have to be careful. In some parks, they don't want you putting wires in their trees. The park rangers are very protective of their trees. They don't want you putting stakes in the ground. And if you're in a place where there are other people, especially kids, that happened last week, they're just attracted to coax. They'll just run right into it. I was at a park outside of Raleigh. But you do want your coax. And then Jay was talking about the things that have changed. batteries has been not only have radios changed, so you've got a FT891 that weighs, I don't know, a pound and a half and does all HF. The 706 also did 2 meters and 440. You can't, as well as 160 to 6 meters. You can't find those anymore. But the radios are smaller and more lightweight and more powerful. But the battery, the big alternative, the new thing, the lithium iron phosphate batteries are cheap, they're lightweight, they're reliable. I started with the old lead acid one, a picture on the beach at a wagon because the battery weighed about 25 pounds. And it's amazing. Go to Amazon and look, and you can find a little bit of everything. Now, I'm not a
Question.
big guy for taking computers. A lot of people
Question,
will.
Bob.
Oh,
Okay,
go ahead.
pause for a question. We're going to turn the microphone.
Yeah, this is N5RTF. Just curious, you were talking about antennas. Have you seen anybody using balloons or drones to place antennas during outdoor operations?
Okay, thank you, Chip. N5RTF, Bob, K4RS.
No,
Any
Chip,
comment?
that's a great question. I've heard in Raleigh are doing it, and then the balloons go all the way back to Marconi. What he did in Newfoundland, just to run your balloon up. There's some of the guys in Scotland and England who still do that. What we do the old-fashioned way, my buddy Thomas K4SWL used an arborist throw bag, the way the tree guys do it, and you can get these from Amazon in like a 10-ounce weight full of buckshot and some good the arborist throw line, which doesn't snag in the trees, and he takes it and he throws it up. Go to any if you're on YouTube, you can go to K4SWL, Google him. Thomas has these wonderful videos of activations all around the place. Mostly he lives in western North Carolina in the mountains. Like I say, I like the verticals, or you can some. Oh, sorry, Alexa wanted to help me over here. But it's really hard. And then most of the parks now are prohibited drones. The state and national parks I've been to, the wildlife areas don't. But I just basically set up a vertical or a random wire will be a random wire antenna if you've got a really good tuner like the Elecraft, 17 feet for the radiator, and 18 feet for the radiator, 7.5 feet for the ground plane. So these are the basic things you have to figure out. Do you want to do QRO full stuff or QRP? The QRP stuff can get pricey. I like Elecraft, and it's state of the art, built in America. Wonderful core group of people who do it, but you're looking at getting in about $1,400 for a KX2 unit. The 891, I think, Gigaport's ham radio outlet has them for like $600, but they don't have a tuner. That's the downside. Let's see.
Hey, this is Whiskey Bravo 5D for identification, the K4 RLC, and we're going to have some more questions for you, Bob, here in a minute. A couple of comments just to be in the loop with your discussion, Bob. So when we're out in the field, if we're doing, and this is something from you and I, doing it together. I mean, we have quiet times where there's not a lot of background noise, and that's quite helpful. And CW becomes quite easy to do, and sometimes even phone. Obviously, if you're doing QRP, 5 watts is a challenge with sideband. But there are times when you're in an area, especially if you're operating portable anywhere where there's solar power and in homes, where you get a lot of radio noise. So you also have to consider the modes you're going to use. To not get totally frustrated, you might want to be prepared to operate FT8. When we were in Belize operating, we had gone to somebody's house up on a 3rd floor. It was beautiful. Okay, Carl, I'm sorry, I guess the screen share for me came up because you're seeing my flex background while I'm talking. Hopefully when Bob's talking, you see his. I'll stop the screen share after Bob, so we don't have to look at the flex screen. I don't have any type of a visual here today, myself, no PowerPoint on my end. And we are recording this, so everybody can view it later. But when we were in Belize, we had so much noise, it was very difficult to make CW contacts. And we had an international group with us, including an operator, a CW operator that was very talented from Japan, and one from California who was very talented, and they were able to make contacts. But I think the contact ratio was probably 10-1. The phone just didn't work. You might have gotten one or two, and we had 100 watts. We were able to do CW, but again, one for every 10 contacts, we did an FT8. So it's nice to, if you're in an environment, to at least be prepared to do FT8. CW is ideal with QRP, as Bob said, and if you're doing sideband, just make sure you will try to do 100 watts. People do with less, but you're not going to do as well. Bob, the other thing I do with the LiPo, I have the battery boxes with the power poles, so it's really easy. Just plug in to battery and switch it over if you need to. Just easy to do. We have Gary with us here today from Ghana, and I'm not sure, Gary, about screen share with you, transmitting your audio with the relationships out of Ghana. Is third-party traffic approved between Ghana and the United States, Gary?
Ghana is a very unusual country. They have their own radio system. Unfortunately, I've not been able to get a hold of anybody here. And the last reference I've seen is 2023. So one of these days I found out there's supposed to be a radio office here in Takoradi where I'm at, and I'll go actually visit it and see if they're doing anything. Ghana does not have a reciprocal agreement with the United States. Beyond that, you have to take a test to get a license here, but I can't get anybody to respond to me. So I haven't been able to talk to them about doing that. It is a different country. Third world, definitely. I've been to Belize, and Belize, I think, is more modernized than Ghana is. So I haven't been on the air since I've been here, but I've been very busy taking care of the health of the missionaries here. This is AG7PY.
Okay, thank you for everything you're doing, Gary. Not knowing if there's, not a third party. I did not transmit your audio on 20 meters, but you're here on the Zoom presentation and the recording that will be available to all amateurs afterwards. Thank you for everything you do. Gary, in talking about this, and we have a MetaShare project, and we're looking in Africa. We're actually planning a trip we're starting to discuss the possibility of a trip to South Africa for Marco in 2027. And trying to get our feeling into different areas of Africa for projects that we might be able to do to support communications. So wouldn't it be ideal if we were able to not only get some solar power for stations and battery power for stations and these basic kits for hams to operate there? And that's a goal. We'll have to figure out our priorities with Marco and MetaShare. We do have a volunteer starting in 2027 to take over the MetaShare project, and he's retiring here soon, moving in September, and he should be settled in by January. And he's wonderful. Wayne, A4, senior moment here, FWP, and Wayne is a radiologist. He reads images in Africa right now on a volunteer basis in Kenya and one other country, and he's agreed to head up the MetaShare initiative with our help, and hopefully we can get Gary on there remotely from Ghana to give input, and others that might want to share on that, because it looks like we're going to be very Africa centered. So this is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta AA4 FL at the mic. I'm going to turn it back over to Bob LLC to continue. He's doing a multimedia presentation, so those of you on Zoom should be able to see his visuals. For those of you on 20 meters, he will go ahead and describe what he's using to prompt the discussion. Again, for ID, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta, operating out of North Central Florida, and our Medical Amateur Radio Council Weekly Net. Go ahead, Bob, K4RLC.
A4FL, K4RC, thank you. And what Gary's talking about, I did a whole hour on international licensing for the Long Island group. We record those. The problem is you have to be a member of LICW to see those. And, you know, the EU is fine. Reciprocal licensure is fine, even though England and the UK are not part of the EU anymore due to Brexit. You still can get licensed. So we did fine in Scotland last year. The Caribbean, St. Lucia is the worst place I've ever tried to get licensed, and we were in St. Kitts 2 years ago. John W5JON has a villa there, nothing like the big one that you were at in St. Lucia, but he drinks beer with the head of the licensing registration in St. Kitts, so he got licensed in like a week and a half. But it is a real issue. The nice thing, I love being outdoors. Now you're talking about problems with noise and everything. Nice thing about being in a park, most of the time you won't get much stuff. If you want to get a 10 dB gain, be a woman. So Alana goes out, she does phone, she passes CW test, but she doesn't do it. And you know, when you hear her lovely voice, my wonderful bride, on 20-meter sideband, she gets a pile up every time. So go get her a gender change. And that's just picnic table photo. It's a bunch of junk there on both of those. Got the radio. This is the old Linco MFJ portable tuner. In the back, you can see this center-loaded coil vertical that was built by this is like 25 years old, W6MMA Vern. I actually talked to him on the phone. And Jay, like I mentioned to you, the equipment's the quality of fine dental tools. It was made that well, and I still use it, take it along, and you can modify it. You can run it off of a camera tripod, a clamp on a table, throw it in a backpack, and it'll do fine. But again, if you want to bust a pile up, you need to be a woman like Alana, and she's great doing that. The battery box, you may have mentioned this. There are a lot of different ways to do it. This is a PowerWorks battery box running that's a 20 amp hour lithium iron phosphate. You can put up to a 40 amp hour battery in there. The thing I like about this one, top left, there's an old cigarette lighter adapter. Though the cars may or may not have them, you can have those, and a power switch, and then a USB A and C. In the middle, it's not on. It's a volt amp percentage meter. On the right are Anderson power poles, which is a really nice interchangeable way. We're all in emergency management using those. And then on the far right, the old-fashioned post. Nothing else. You just strip the wire, put it there, screw it down, and you're ready to go. This is the inside of the box. You can charge it externally, and also it has a port to put in solar panels. Solar panels certainly will help on your own. They're slow, and there's, it has to do with cloud cover and things like that. But this is real. What I like about this is a handle, and you can grab and go with that one. Cool places. St. Lucia. Jay and I actually I dragged Jay up to a peak at Signal Hill on the other side of the mountain there in St. Lucia, and I was doing 20 CW, and Jay was doing satellite. On the right, Gethios is out by a Greek lighthouse on a peninsula in the Aegean Sea. And this was the port for ancient Sparta. And people say, well, what do? You need to take a chair and stuff? Well, this is rubble from the ancient port of Sparta, and I just sit on that. I also do photography, and the stuff gets heavy, so what I do is try to multi-use. So this is a camera tripod with that center-loaded vertical. When you start getting cameras and lens and stuff and radios, it adds up pretty much. But you also, when you're there, you get what's called a saltwater amplifier. Fort Rodney, I was using the Canon there as a counterpoise, and just being in the GNC. Now, SOTA, Summits on the Air, is different. Started in the UK maybe 20 years ago, and there are SOTA peaks, Summits on the Air peaks all over the world. They have to be 300 meters above sort of mean ground. And it can't just be a peak, it has to have the vertical height. On the left, again, my lovely bride, Alana. Moore's Knob is part of the Sourtown Mountains, which are a spinoff of the Appalachian Mountains in northwest North Carolina. And if you've got the zoom stuff, you see this valley. This is really interesting, and it ties in with America 250. This was the superhighway where people left New York and Pennsylvania and came down through the Appalachian Mountains to come to Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and settle. There's so many ancient Indian pathways there. So that's North Carolina. On the right, Sharp Top, Virginia. Used to think it was the highest peak in Virginia. And for that, for a lot of times with summits, what we do is get up on a peak and just use 2-meter simplex FM with a handy talkie. And the greatest distance I've got with a handy talkie is about 60 miles from Virginia over to Tennessee to Dean on Black Ellis Call, is a big summit guy. You're talking about health and stuff. Unfortunately, coming down from Sharp Top, one of our crew had symptoms of a heart attack, and we're out in the boonies, and the closest healthcare facility was a rural fire department. And those guys, they hadn't seen any activity in a long time. Here comes this guy. It looks like he's got a heart attack. They had a blast. They got so happy, and they ended up transporting him down to the medical school, Virginia Tech Medical School in Roanoke. He's fine now. So we've done also full hours on medical and first aid kits. And at one point, I was certified in Wilderness Advanced Life Support by the Wilderness Medical Society. That was when I had this idea of volunteering at the hospital, the base camp hospital on Mount Everest. Probably not going to get to do that right now. But anyway, with the summits, you're up on a mountain, and it's just wonderful being there. Another one of my favorite places, Hanging Rock State Park. There's Vern's center-loaded antenna with a KX2 Elecraft radio, and then the other one on the right, just the back of my Forerunner, is set up a chair and a mast. And I think this is the last one. Fun places. Last year we went to Highlands of Scotland and Iceland, and cannons make a wonderful counterpoise. This is Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh Castle, the Royal Mile, Arthur's Knee, all those are parks on the air parks you can operate from. So I was using the KH1, which is the Elecraft handheld, but it's a CW only radio with a 4-foot whip. And it's really interesting. There was like a pipeline from northern Scotland, the Highlands, into Germany. Germany has wonderful CW operators who can dig you weak signals out of noise. And then on the right, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, just this incredible cathedral in Reykjavik. So
Can I pause one here, Don?
Sir?
Can I pause for ID here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta for ID. Jay at the mic, AA4FL opposite from Florida. We have Bob being in our roundtable discussion, laying out the basics for others to come in and ask questions and make comments about their own. And then we're going to move over to that here, Bob, in just a second. We've also had others with us speaking. AG7PY is coming in from Ghana on Zoom. So he's not able to be on 20 meters, but he's our new 7th district director. When he returns to the United States, he'll have some time to do that. We appreciate, Gary, you agreeing to be 7th district director. We also were able to add another member. Toby Claremont is a KH7 who was for years in Hawaii military. He just recently retired. He's an RN and very active in all matters emergency. So as we start a committee where we'll start focusing on more of these portal operations and emergency preparedness for communication, Toby's agreed to head that up as we appoint that from the board. We have a number of stations here on 20 meters. I'd like to give those on 20 meters an opportunity to ask Bob questions. But before we do that, let's see, is there anyone else on 20 meters that would like to check in? So you can have opportunity to be in the roundtable discussion. Let's start with additional check-ins on 20 meters. Make your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. Okay, we have Dave in Virginia, KN0S. Dave, do you have any questions for Bob or comments about portable operation? I know you were in the military for years, and you must have a lot of wisdom on these subjects. Go ahead, Dave. KN0S.
CW specific. Every to sign to do it. I used to use a little motorcycle battery and keep it charged up with the solar cell. That was my on operation.
Okay, thank you, KN0S. Are there stations on 20 meters that would like to ask Bob questions? Now, before we actually pose the question, let's make a list and let's make sure we have propagation to support the question. Make your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta at this time if you'd like to be on the list for questions. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone on 20 meters wanting to ask a question. So on Zoom here, is there anyone that would like to continue this discussion with Bob and direct some questions? Go ahead and raise your hand. I'm not seeing any additional questions this time, but we do. We have Stuart, WA9ZPL, Bob. Let's turn the microphone over to Stuart, WA9ZPL. Go ahead, Stuart.
I have a question about starting with POTA. If I've never been involved with POTA, how do I get started prior to my first portable operation?
Great question. The POTA website is a good place to start. Just Google POTA and it'll come up and you can get an account for free. If they're a local radio club, the guys involved, usually they're very happy to have you go on activations. If you go to Field Day, which is sort of the original ARL portable operation, the whole point of Field Day back in the 20s was to set up emergency communication off the grid. There will usually be some POTA folks there. There's also a POTA Facebook page and with lots of activity. So I would say get a POTA account first and then see if there's some local hams in your area doing it and they'd be happy to mentor you.
And if I want to activate a park, what's the definition of a park? Does it have to be a state park, national park? Can it be a city park? Can it be a forest preserve?
Another great question. Like I said, we do like almost full hour presentations of this. The POTA website, the nice thing about it is that if you share your location, it will show you the nearest POTA site to you. But right now there are state and national parks. They're not city and county parks. None are involved, and I think that's sort of an error. But the other thing is not just parks, but also national historical monuments, Revolutionary War battlegrounds. For example, next month I'm going to Kings Mountain National Battlefield in South Carolina. It was so called, part of that's the American Revolution 250th anniversary. In South Carolina, they say we won the war, we won the revolution. Anyway, that's going to be a place to activate. But the nice thing about the POTA website, if you share your location, it'll tell you that all the nearest valid parks, and you click on it, give you directions to the park. You can get maps, and you can see who's activated recently. and you may see some of the peaks, or you may know some of the hams are activated, and you can just send them an email sometimes and say, hey, I don't know you, but I'm interested in doing this. And a lot of times, yeah, come on, I'm going to be, I'm going to be in a park next Saturday. Come on and go with me. Back to you, Stuart. It's Bob, K4RLC.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, guys. This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta for ID, JAA4FL at the mic. We're operating out of Hawthorne, Florida, home QTH. We're having a roundtable discussion about portable operations and also, obviously, POTUS, since that's part of the operation. We do have a comment from came in through electronically from Keith, N3IM, and Keith had mentioned that many POTA operators are now using fiberglass masks. So there are always new developments and new opportunities, or if it's becoming sort of a popular activity, there's a lot of incentive for people to develop equipment and software. So the World Radio League, when I was at Hamvention, I was talking to James, who was written their POTA software. He's a graduate of Vanderbilt University, trying to keep it in the SEC. Bob Big, an ACC person. And he's a very nice gentleman. He also works closely with the Ham Radio Prep, the educational team there that get his licensing aids. And I look for that to improve in the future. Now, I've asked James, or perhaps in the fall, we'll start setting up a few evening special events, evening United States. Sorry, Gary, I know in Africa that's going to put
Oh,
you there
that's okay.
early in the morning. But we'll probably do something on a weeknight that could involve some of them may be amateur radio topics, some may be general topics for the entire family, but we'll have him talk about his particular product, POTA, and also the discussion in the context that we're having today. I mean, is this the future of amateur radio? Then what impact is it going to have on radio equipment? So, Bob, you talked about some of your older equipment, how bulky it was, K4RLC, and obviously that was made difficult to do field operations, although certainly field day was an effort that was done by many people in occasion, the generators and such. Nowadays with the solar power and such, but the equipment is miniaturizing. I know I've seen the smallest aircraft radio, the CW only radio. It's tiny. It doesn't take much to get out still low power on CW, but where do you think, Bob? I ask you a hypothetical question. If we go 5 or 10 years from now, knowing that this may be a direction the hobby leans toward, particularly with young people, what do you envision? What do you think will happen? And you just mentioned one thing, that POTUS right now are only state and national parks. So what do you envision 5 or 10 years from now that operation might be for portable operation, Bob? We turn the mic back over to K4RLC.
A4FL, K4RLC. Great question. I think miniaturization from when I started that old Alinco versus I have a mountain topper that weighs 3 ounces. This little 5-watt CW only machine. I've tried to avoid this. I don't do FT8, and I really am very biased about it. Although I know it's popular, people are doing it, and people are doing it for POTA, not so much for SOTA. But the digital modes, Whisper, there are a lot of them I've read about, but I really haven't done. But I think a lot of the younger people are enjoying the digital modes. CW does have a comeback. There's a new processor. The nice thing about Aircraft, there's a new processing way for sideband CESSB that's using their internal part for their little miniature, the KX2 and KX3. This is going to get a much greater boost for sideband. So there may be more tweaking of the modulation. Sideband is a modification of AM, a full sideband versus a single sideband. So there may be more digital. For emergency, nobody uses FT8, but there is a digital way to send letters and emails purely by ham radio. When the grid goes down, it's called WinLink. and it uses the sound, either a sound card in your radio, the IC 7300 built in, or you can get this little dongle, about the size of a box of matches from Digirig that works specifically with the FT891, and you just have a laptop. And that is really what you'll want to do in an emergency, because you're not really these days going to use CW very much, but you're going to be sending full records, forms, inventories, and some of the forms are FEMA forms like the IC-213. But say you're at a Red Cross site out in the boonies where some of the people were in Mississippi and Louisiana, and you need food and water and supplies, antibiotics, and you need a nurse or whatever. Somebody's going to come out and give tetanus shots. And that's a lot of stuff to do by voice. So you take the IC-213 or the form that needs it, put it in, do it on your computer, and boom, you're out. You're sending it by 40 meters or 20 meters. So I think we're going to see greater miniaturization. It's hard to believe things can get smaller, but they always do. Greater power. There are ways now to link your cell phone with your radio to do actually FT8 from an iPhone and a radio if you don't have that. I think we've really got to work with these really smart universities like NC State, Virginia Tech, places where their kids are engineers still get interested in ham radio. They're nice. So I'm a dinosaur. I like CW. I'm going to do it. Sideband's fine, but I think you're going to see a tweaking in that to make it more of a with more punch and less bandwidth and less power. But I'm not a good prognosticator, so that's best I can do. Back to you, A4FL, K4RLC.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. K4RLC, AA4FL. Gary, did you have a comment that you'd like to make here? AJ7PB, at least on the Zoom side? Go ahead.
Yes, this is AG7PY. I was involved with the Taylorsville Amateur Radio Club and Salt Lake County Aries to a large degree. And with the POTA things, we found a unique way for some of our members to get some POTA activations out in the middle of the West Desert between Utah and Nevada. We are responsible for communications for the annual Pony or semi-annual Pony Express re-ride, and we had to set up relay stations out in the middle of nowhere to get the signals out, because we also have a lot of mountain ranges. And some of those are POTA activation stations, so they'd put up at a POTA park and act as a relay and get a lot of POTA contacts. So we get involved in a lot, and a lot of the things you mentioned, Bob, we go a little bit further because of the unique topography we have with big mountains. We actually have set up dish networking systems on a number of the hospitals and some of the state buildings, and they'll put ham radio operators. So we'll use a mesh system, a large system, to send big data files and keep communication. And one of the big hospital association groups in the Salt Lake Valley was extremely impressed that they could pick up a telephone, dial a number, not a regular phone number, but a number, and talk to another facility. So if their communications goes down, ham radio is still talking. So we did a lot of that for emergency and preparing, and the Salt Lake County EOC saw the need for it, and they put in 4 ham radio stations and got members of the Aries group certified with ID to go into those when there's an emergency and set up 4 ham stations right in the valley. So we've been involved in that to a large degree for quite a while now. This is AG7PY. Back to you, AA4FL.
Okay. Thank you. We had Gary AG7PY making some comments here on Zoom, not on 20 meters, talking about the Salt Lake City area and how they use mesh networks also, and they involve communications even in remote operations. And we'll have Gary on another time. He's in Ghana, and we don't have an agreement for him to transfer here. to transmit here on 20 meters, unfortunately. Gary, you made a very wise comment here about mesh, though. When I was at Hamvention, one thing I did notice, and we're across the booth is across from a mesh community. Now, there are mesh communities that are not ham radio involved, and then there's mesh network equipment that is ham radio enabled. And the advantages, of course, of the ham radio is you get licensed, you've got more power, you got the ability to have telephone systems, and that can support the hospitals. But when you get into young people now, one thing I'm noticing at the University of Florida, I imagine it's true at other colleges, people that may have been a little reluctant to get involved in amateur radio, whether they be engineering students or not, a lot of students are involved in the regular public mesh. So it would be nice to get involved in the mesh, get that going in colleges, and then once you see who's active in the college level of mesh, let them know how much more they could do with amateur radio. It would be a good entry point for encouraging young people into amateur radio. And Bob, you had mentioned a few colleges in the ACC, you had mentioned NC State, Virginia Tech, which of course are absolutely wonderful engineering schools and put out fantastic grads, as well as many other schools here in the country that specialize in engineering. And wouldn't it be nice for all colleges to do that? But when it comes to medical students or nursing students, emergency communication, if we want to get people in the health fields involved, we need to catch that group before they start their professional programs, because they're not going to have the time to get operations going. So one other aspect that we could do in a hospital environment, say we had a winkling system set up at a particular college and you worked with facility services, the physical plant of the hospitals in support, you could have undergrads that want to get into health care fields. They're going to need to polish their CVs, their resumes, their applications, get involved in pre-professional programs that also offer the opportunity for them to work with these special programs to support hospital communications. And that way you're getting people that are going into the health fields involved. Is there anyone here on the Zoom side that would like to make some comments about any of these previous discussions that we're having about attracting young hands and what the future might be in amateur radio when it comes to portable operations? If so, do a physical hand raise for me.
Kilo Charlie, 0 Lima, Kilo Victor, Kilo Charlie, 0 Lima, Kilo Victor.
Okay, we have Kilo Charlie 0 Lima Kilo Victor in 20 meters. We'll give you an opportunity to not only log in, but to sign into the net, but to have the microphone. Anybody else on Zoom first? Okay, let me get you logged in here or signed in here. Kilo Charlie 0 Lima Kilo Victor QSL. Yeah, QSL. Unfortunately, Bernard, I'm sorry, we're not getting your signal very strong right now to do substantial discussion on the subject here in the round table. Try one more time. I'm just not copying you well enough. I've got the call sign. I apologize, but I just don't have enough signal here for a roundtable discussion. But I will be more than happy to relay comments or questions. Go ahead and let me know your comments. Okay, Kilo Charlie 0 Lima Kilo Victor. Did you have a question or comment that you wanted to make? Go ahead and relay it through me. Unfortunately, it's a very poor copy right now. And thank you for the report someone made about the solar conditions. Although the flux is reasonable, there's apparently a geomagnetic storm right now. So we don't really have ideal conditions. Go ahead.
And down on you.
Yeah, we appreciate your desire to join the conversation. Go ahead and email me, and I will spread that to our listserv, your comments. You can do look at the QRZ page for Alpha 4 Foxtrot Lima, Alpha 4 Foxtrot Lima, and when you get my email address, email me your comments, and we'll spread that discussion and get you involved in it. Perhaps we can add you to our to one of our listservs here, so you can be involved in the roundtable discussion that way. QSL.
Yourself. I'm gonna send you an email and hopefully you receive it in time and maybe you can share the information with everybody that is listening. So just give me a few minutes and I hope to hear that you receive the email. Yourself?
Yeah, QSL. We'll be on the lookout for that and ready for your comments. Stuart, WA9ZPL has something he'd like to discuss here about Chicago area mesh networks. And so, Stuart, can I turn the microphone over to you, please?
Certainly. Yeah, I'm not involved with mesh, but when I was putting some VHF and UHF antennas in my attic, I kind of roughed in wiring so that I could have a mesh network access up there and even control it from the shack in my basement. And Chicago, of course, has no hills, no mountains. That helps out. I'm looking at the map, and for my locality in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, there are actually 12 mesh repeaters. And I think that might be a good project for me.
Yeah, and that's public airwaves. That's 900 megahertz. I guess you're limited to 1 watt. Is that correct, Steve?
I don't know the regulations. It's the industrial, medical, and scientific band. And I'm thinking line of sight. And the antenna I put in my attic that could be used as a disc cone, and it's about 45 feet above average terrain. And we have a wooden roof. I think it just might work if I ever get to the stage of doing this project.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. And I know you mentioned Meshtastic and Mesh Core, so there's competing formats to use for that. Unfortunately, I heard it eventually even Mesh Core is starting to truncate as well. So you have different ways of involving them. And Mesh is also, Andy, WJB, has something to mention about Mesh. So Andy, how about I turn the mic over to WJB? Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, well, I've been familiar with mesh from someone I talk to on regularly on DStarNet, and his name's Mark, WA4KFZ. He actually runs the mesh data network that is set up for the Marine Corps Marathon every fall. And of course, he's always asking for volunteers, but they have several sites available to them that are high, and they can link the different networks receivers at those locations, and they can monitor health data from the runners as well as for anybody else that gets into a medical issue during the event, be it a runner or other people in the crowd through that network. And they've been doing that for several years now. So if you have the right locations and you have enough places to put the transmitter receiver at a high spots, it works very, very well. Back to you, Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And Andy, you made an important point, and we need to talk about HIPAA. because when you're using mesh on that scientific, the 900 megahertz frequencies, not the amateur frequencies, you, with the mesh test, I believe some of the manufacturers of the equipment allow you to encrypt. So you don't have the HIPAA, you can have a private channel. But obviously on amateur radio, if you do an amateur radio mesh, that is not possible. So we need to delineate the differences between ham radio mesh and the public airway mesh. So thank you. These are all areas of discussion. For Bob, we said, 5 or 10 years from now, where may we be? If we're having digital amateur radio sideband, and we're talking about a lot of times sideband being an issue because of interferences or noise, I would think that the digital version may be more tolerant to that. And that could really change. I mean, look at the software that's come along. Look what we're doing with FT8 and FT4 and FT2. There's constantly improvements being made on the software side. So anything we can do in the signal to noise ratio to pull things out would be very beneficial to future changes in portable operation. And N3IM has made some comments about why mesh networks have had some problematic issues on MeshFlow, which we're talking about Keith as a Renaissance man. I think he is one of the ones that maybe Chet that would rival our recently departed Warren Brown, who passed away. He's Renaissance man. And Keith knows a lot about mesh, and he knows a lot about anything digital. And Andy's the same way, WG8B. Realize these are Marco members who know a lot about these subjects. If you would join the IO group for Marco, we have a new IO group for Healthcare Hams IO group. Just look for the IO group, search for Healthcare Hams, and we'll have to add you to the list. And you can have these interactive discussions by IO group. We can set up a thread just for that. And certainly we can have a future program or discussion about it. Or we can set up an evening special event at Zoom only, so we're not on 20 meters. I'm going to bring the 20 meters to a close here and continue on the Zoom to return the frequency to general amateur use. Not that it isn't already, but we are in the POTA block. Do we have anybody on 20 meters that would like to make a comment before we close 20 meters? This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta for ID, AA4 Alpha Mike. Thank you for all those on 20 meters that were allowing us the clear use of the frequency as our usual net frequency. If you would like to get the YouTube recording, we'll put them up later today. All you have to do is go to Healthcare Hams YouTube channel. When you search on YouTube, Healthcare Hams, 3 separate words, you'll find the YouTube channel. We have probably over 50 different recordings, and this one should be up later today, and you'll be able to pick up on any of the video prompts or anything that you weren't able to interact with. And we encourage you to also email us using the link on QRZ, the Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta email link, or my personal one, Alpha 4 Foxtrot Lima. Again, thank you for the use of the frequency. We're going to go QRT on 20 meters, and we will continue on Zoom 73 WB5D QRT.
Jay, can I follow up on Gary's great comments?
Yeah, we're Zoom only right now, so yes, please go ahead, Bob.
Anyway, Gary, I want to thank you for your medical missionary work in Ghana. It's just God's work you're doing, and follow up that it's just interesting how the terrain out there in Utah and Nevada is so different than the East Coast, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, but working and learning a lot through doing public service and doing that. Here in South Carolina, we have what's called the SC Hearts Network, South Carolina Hearts Network, that 2-meter links for all the major hospitals here. And in North Carolina, I was involved in actually setting up 2-meter stations on areas around hospital areas around Raleigh. They've sort of unfortunately fallen by the wayside. To give a real world report, in western North Carolina, Hurricane Helene about a year and a half ago, in Asheville, North Carolina, and west and north of that, just devastated everything to the point that the 911 emergency 911 centers were offline for about 3 days. Cell lines were down. You don't think of western North Carolina as a hurricane thing, but historically, the Gulf hurricanes go up through where Chip is. They hit Chip's house, and they go north and then come into western North Carolina. And 2-meter radio was really the backbone of that. And there was a guy who got on his 2-meter station and said, "Hey, he actually was near Charlotte, North Carolina. Does anybody need any help? Can I do anything?" And he was on the air for almost 24 hours straight doing health and welfare and medical calls. Fortunately, there was a repeater on top of Mount Mitchell, the highest mountain on the East Coast, which happens to be in North Carolina, a 2-meter repeater, that at one point, the story goes, the feds or somebody wanted it off, but Billy Graham, the great Southern Baptist evangelist, interceded and kept the repeater up there. And it's really good because it has just incredible coverage. But the other thing that happens, my friend Thomas in Swannanoa, just east of Asheville, Thomas has more radios than his wife, or it's like us. You don't want to ask your wife or let your wife know how many radios you really have. But Thomas gave out ham radios to everybody, this mountain community, probably about 20 people. And with the idea they weren't licensed, but it's an emergency and we can do it, and set up 2-meter nets and had check-in nets. They even had to have one of his neighbors airlifted by a copter off of there. And what they're doing, I think it sounds bad to me, but some people just don't want to take the license. They see it as a great hindrance. It's sort of like in the old days when CB was so popular. At first you had to pay for a license, or was an exam, and now it's the Wild West, I guess. So now they're switching to GMRS. You have to buy a license, but you don't have to take a test. And actually, the Swannanoa Fire Department, they set up a 2-meter, I guess it's still 2 meters, a GM, General Mobile Radio Service repeater. And a lot of the folks on the mountains have gotten this. But I think one thing is a lot of people even feel overwhelmed. Still come to me last week, "Hey, I don't think I can pass this test," and talking about the technician test. But I'm just saying, no, there's no problem. It's there. You'll learn it. We've got radio clips to teach you. There's good resources on YouTube or the internet. But trying to make people understand that it's not a hindrance. My son Bobby got his general, I think he was 13 when he got his general, and Lauren got her tech. And I I tried to get Bobby involved in STEM at NC State. I would send him to aerospace engineering camps in the summer, which was great. And finally, he broke my heart when he was a junior, and he said, "Give it up, Dad. I'm not going to be an engineer." But getting again the early involvement and making people understand that the test is not that cumbersome. And then the new stuff, the mesh, yeah, I've heard it. It's working. It sounds like what Keith is saying. It's sort of a Wild West out there too. There are different versions and stuff. But the Red Cross, which I also do disaster communications with, is looking into that. Coolest thing we've had at the Red Cross is a portable satellite station that's a handheld. It's a suitcase, and you can carry it out in the field and set it up and do voice and data communications. You just take the antenna and you got to aim it at the bird, sort of like, Jay, what you were doing at St. Lucia. But that's I've taken too much airtime. I apologize for that. K4RLC back to A4FL.
No problem at all. I'm going to go ahead and stop your screen share here. Do you have any more slides, Bob?
No, sir. I'm sorry.
Do you have any more slides?
No, sir.
No? Okay, let's just stop the share screen. I think we can stop the share.
I stopped it on my end.
Okay, good. Now we can all see.
You can see this cheek.
Okay. Glad we got it before it spread down all the facial planes. Thank you for being everything. Gary, are you needing to run? Say?
I am still here. If I disappear occasionally, about 10 minutes before this started, my power died here, which is very common in Takoradi. So we had to go out and fire up the generator. So I'm on generator power. So I have to go out and occasionally see if the power's on to the rest of the neighborhood again. So I can shut off the generator and go back on street power. But yeah, we use Arden mesh a lot because we found it's a lot better than most, and we can get the antennas really cheap. There's a group in Utah that's pulling them out of service. We get them, and we flash the software onto the firmware onto them, and we can use them for ham use. It really started in southern Utah, where the entire southern half of the state of Utah, and if you look at Utah, it's a big state, is all connected by mesh networks. So they do that. And you mentioned the hurricanes. A good example that I use, I was the training officer for the Taylorsville Amateur Radio Club, and of course in charge of communications with the Pony Express last year. But in Davis County, just north of Salt Lake, 2011, they had a huge windstorm. 911, police, and fire were so overwhelmed, they became worthless. They were worthless. So they called Davis County ARES in. They put up ham stations around the county in their vehicles, and they'd put runners to go to each of these stations and pass messages. We're looking and getting ready for a big earthquake in the Salt Lake Valley. We're overdue for a big earthquake. And if that happens, ham radio is going to be the only communications we have. So we're looking at it and we're getting set up for that. But we're getting the Arden system connected, and where we've got too big of a gap with Arden, we use Starlink to connect the two. So we're getting into a lot of the technical stuff to send big databases, use cell phones, telephones to communicate. So I was involved in a lot of that before I came here. And now maybe someday I'll find out who is actually in charge and get response and maybe get licensed here in Ghana. This is AG7PY back to AA4FL.
Well, thank you, Gary. And, as Metashare projects in countries that are interested in doing that and coming up with some funding to at least to the degree that we can. I mean, obviously we'd have to do more fundraising. $7,000 isn't going to light the world on fire, but you can also work in tandem with other organizations in doing so. So thank you for sharing your expertise. If there's any way possible, Gary, the people that are involved in setting up the system in Utah, if you wouldn't mind sending me the contact information, they work with hospitals specifically, or just the emergency communications, connecting the EOCs with mesh. Anything you can give me a lead on. I think we need to do something like that, at least at the hospital system here in Gainesville. And if we can,
Yeah, I can get you a couple of names of the people that deal with a lot that can give you a lot of information.
it'd be nice if we could template this using a couple of existing examples, like what's going on in Utah, and start spreading the word so others can start setting up similar. It'll be a resource for amateur radio and for the community. Another way to get people involved. It's not going to catch your young people necessarily. And that's the problem I had, is that the facility services wanted the amateur radio supported. So you'd have to go with an Arden-like system. You'd have to train everybody. They'd have to be licensed. I'm having a hard enough time getting students just to join the radio club. So coming in with the public mesh to start with, and then using both could be an advantage. And getting people interested while they're young enough. People just, from church, you get involved in your work, you get involved in church. There's not a whole lot of time with family. I don't know which order it is from person to person, but with those three things, it's just, for hobbies, there's like 20 or 30 years of your life. It just makes it very difficult to have. And somebody starting a young professional career, you got to get them when they're younger and while they have the desire to polish that application, something needs to separate them from the others. The dental school, Gary, here, and the students are absolutely wonderful. I have no idea how the admissions committee does it. They only accept 4% of the applicants. And how they nail it almost every time. I've got 96 students. Honestly, I would say that 92 to 9 out of the 96 from the interpersonal skills and people persons, they're not just academicians. How they get it right every time, I don't know. And the other 4, we get them up to speed. So sometimes I actually feel that my job as a part-time educator is to work more with them on treating the people rather than the teeth. I mean, they're working on teeth, but they're working on people who just happen to have teeth. I'm glad to fill that role with somebody that has a background through the American Dental Association, the Florida Dental Association, in communication skills and spokesperson's training and working with the public. So I'm not beating my chest here in 20 meters and bragging. So, well, we have a small group here. That's where I come, Gary. So we've got this Marco community that's growing, healthcare hams community that's growing, adding individuals of expertise like you. And if we all pitch in with our strengths and we all become involved, there's no one burden on any one person to run the organization. We all can pitch in and not work in our areas of passion without having it be an additional burden. So we can still what we love doing in amateur radio without being overwhelmed for being a member in the medical amateur radio council. Well, that's my philosophy anyway. So we need to make sure that our bylaws reflect that and that our operating procedures from the board reflect that as well. And just like we're talking about emergency communications and portable communications 5 or 10 years out, it's time to review the organization. So our current new president here is a biomechanical engineer and software guy, Gary. He's not a physician. He'll be here for 2 years, and that's his core competency in organizations running businesses, and his goal is to work towards that during his presidency. And Stuart, who's here with us, WA9ZPL Stuart. I'm not going to necessarily speak for just Stuart, but I know Stuart has a passion for medicine and medical education, and I can see where Stuart will take the next group more into the renewing our CE, our medical education training. By then, we'll have such nice committees that can support. We can have different focuses through a presidential term. Stuart, why don't you take the microphone and tell a little bit about yourself so Gary gets up to speed with you. Unmute, Gary. Unmute.
Hi, this is Stuart, WA9ZPL. I'm a physician specialized in geriatric medicine and internal medicine. I retired from clinical practice just over 12 months ago. I'm still working on some efforts in teaching. Historically, I spent my entire career doing primary care, following a stable group of patients because I happen to be in a stable community in suburban Chicago. And it was great. About a third of my work effort over those years was teaching. I was teaching primarily medical students of all 4 years of medical school, with the emphasis on the third year and the fourth year. I was also teaching internal medicine residents. And going forward, one of my projects is involving teaching of clinical problem solving or differential diagnosis. I'll have to see how that pans out. Back to you, Jay.
Thank you, Stuart. No, well, we have Gary here, and Gary's new to being active in Marco. Let's hear a little bit about a few of us that are here. Alana, why don't you start by telling a little bit about what you did in your professional career, because we're bringing all this expertise to the organization, and we all need to know each other, so we knew who to share and ask questions with. Go ahead, if you'd unmute Alana, I'll turn the mic over to K4AAC.
Okay, here and I was thinking I'd gotten through without saying a word, which is good. I'm Alana Condor. I'm Bob Condor's wife, K4AAC. I'm a pediatric neuropsychologist getting ready to retire, working with kids, teenagers, and they start growing up and they become sometimes even college students and grad students who typically have some type of a medical or neurologic disorder that involves cognition and neurobehavioral functioning. So I've been working, Bob and I have been pretty active for quite a while now. It seems like about a decade and a little bit more, doing more specific work in concussions, concussion management. He had been the neuropsychologist for the Carolina Hurricanes. And so, I was supporting with that testing, preseason testing, and then post-injury testing. I work a lot with students, at the more at the JV and varsity levels when they get concussions that are sports related or not. So we've presented on that for Marco a few times. And mostly now I'm just trying to get out of some medical complications and get back into about a month and a half of work and then fully retire. So, but I was going to say, completely unrelated to me, Stuart, to your question before about getting involved in POTA, if you're looking at the website that Bob had referenced, it'll let you know other things too as well. So there's both the people who are going out to the POTA sites and activating, as well as people who are hunters who are trying to collect POTA sites that they've worked. So, every park has its number, and you are the people who are the activators are going to be saying what park they're at. And on the website, there's another function where you can let people know you're going to be at a site in case you're in a POTA location or a SOTA location on the SOTA website similarly, that you're going to be there at a certain place and time. And if that happens to be a desirable location or one that you think you could make a contact with, you could be listening for them, and you can get a little involved in some parts of the POTA, not having to leave your shack, but just being one of the people who answers, which when you are out there in the field, calling on fairly low power, sometimes it's really nice if somebody is able to hear you from maybe a more an active or their own home shack where they have better reception than another POTA location might. So there are park to park, communications, but there's also just the park to a home location. So that is also another aspect of it that some people who don't want to go out do. And you can always listen. If you hear somebody saying that they're POTA or giving a park number, if you answer it, they'll be very appreciative probably, because they're looking to you have to make 10 contacts at a station in order to get credit for having activated it. And sometimes on low power, it's not that easy. So that's it.
Very good point. Very good point.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
She's very modest, if I can say. We work with a couple of Div 1 football teams, North Carolina teams, UNC, NC State. Alana's maybe 5'1", very petite. She can boss a 320-pound linebacker around like crazy, and you should have seen her intimidate those guys. And then the second thing, go Canes. I was the concussion doctor for the Carolina Hurricanes for over a decade, and most of the coach was active when we played. Starting Tuesday, the Cup playoffs. If you ever worked with all these athletes of every sport, hockey players are some of the most incredible athletes because they're skating 40 miles an hour backwards. Mm-hmm. And they don't just use aerobic metabolism, they use anaerobic. How can you metabolize without any oxygen? That's why they have the short shifts. But anyway, We're going to play the Las Vegas Knights and starting Monday in Raleigh. So if you want to see some really good hockey, tune into that. Sorry for the plug. Back to you.
Well, I actually enjoyed the plug. I've got a family member who's from Montreal. He's a Canadian fan. I didn't realize the Hurricanes had beaten him, and he lives in Las Vegas. So at least he gets to see, and he's third in command at Allegiant Airlines, so he's got tickets to the games. No problem, probably in a private box. Gary, did you have to go check the generator? Is that
Yeah, it's still running.
okay? So we're talking a little bit, answering some POTA issues for Stuart here. I'd like you to also meet Chip, N5RTF. Chip is one of the Renaissance men that I referred to. And Chip, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and about your pet who comes from the other further south in Africa?
Well, I'm Chip Keister, N5RTF. I'm a retired geriatric psychiatrist. Over my career, I started out at 16 years old working in a hospital. Always thought I would go into electronics, but I asked my boss one time if one of the doctors told me to do something. I said, well, that didn't make any sense. He said, well, you got to do it anyway. I said, why? He said, because he's a doctor. I said, well, hell, I can do that, with all. So here I am. But I spent most of my career, I call it debugging wetware, people's foibles and dissatisfactions and problems getting from where they are to where they think they should be. Very interesting. It's a lot like debugging computers or trying to find the problems in hardware. It's all problem solving. It's all pattern recognition and problem solving. So it's a puzzle, and it keeps you alert and keeps you active. And I still read about a lot of different subjects and try to learn something new every day. YouTube is wonderful. I find stuff that I never even knew existed on YouTube. But Jay and Randy are going to be here in a couple of days, and we'll play out in the swamp, go fishing, and I'll show them our park. It's 200 yards away, so it's not that great a sacrifice to get there if we want to do a POTA activation. I had a couple of my radios here. This is the KX2, which is probably weighs about 2 pounds. This is a less expensive BitX. This is a BitX, and I think that they have I think that they have tuners. I can't recall the KX2, but I think the BitX definitely has a tuner in it as well. So they run off of 12 volts or batteries and just amazing little devices. So that the problem is no longer the radio equipment or even the batteries. It's just purely the motivation and getting to where you want to be and setting up a decent antenna. So I agree with Jay. I think that a lot of the future of ham radio is going to be that kind of stuff, because people need to get out more, and they need an excuse to get out more, and this gives it to them. So
Thank you, Chip. And by the way, the Zoom recording is still running, so I'm glad everybody is having good input, and the video will be shared. What generally happens with our videos, Gary, and if we're talking about a medical subject in particular, we make the YouTube video after having these roundtable discussions, and they end up on YouTube, and then people search for a particular subject, and they find out that amateur radio operators are ham radio operators, physicians too, or medical people, nurses, EMTs, all different levels, and we're trying to find a home for all different levels of healthcare, obviously, academicians, researchers. The old days in 1966, where we were formed, and this is our 60th anniversary a week ago. May 23rd, I think, 1966. So 60 years of Marco. And it was formed by physicians who wanted to, in dentists, who wanted to do their continuing medical education on the air. That's why the ground rounds are on Sunday mornings. It's not an affront to those that are religious, but they were doing their rounds in the hospital 6 days a week. And on Sunday morning was their time to do medical rounds on radio. I think that is dated concept now with propagation on 20 meters. That's one thing I want to talk to Chip about when I'm there, is that maybe the grand rounds can still be grand rounds, but just in terms of an open discussion forum to vet ideas, to have special evening programs where we do the discussions in detail. So we don't not only offend, but we have a better participation, because the time of day and being on Sunday morning during church time, it's really not the optimal time for the current day. We're also happen to be in the POTUS section of the band right now, so that also creates a lot of QRM, and we're getting in more towards more challenging propagation conditions. So we can still have it both ways. We can still have it Sunday morning and not offend, but we'll have better participation if we go with say maybe a Sunday evening, or we'll just have to discuss that as a group. But those are one of the areas up for discussion, and whether or not we just schedule it two evenings a month rather than every week, and then use those in betweens to discuss what we might best discuss Sunday morning topics, and in online discussions on the IO group as to what we might want to do. Also, we have special programs we can do on weekday evenings. The person from the POTA group, the World Radio League, who Keith, if you're still with us, I think you might have been the person who told me about the World Radio League to begin with, and I have been in touch with James, and I signed up for it. And I noticed there's some hams nearby that do POTAs, because they show who's active members. So you can, Bob, that's that's another resource for Stewart, WA9ZPL, that you can actually go on and see who does POTA in your area and network with them to go out and do POTAs together, so you can learn. But James has this beautiful software that allows you to go ahead and log as well as integrate into POTA activities. So having him for an evening program would be excellent. We also had an ophthalmologic program that wanted to be Dave KN2M wanted to present. So we can have evening events as well, special events. There's a lot of ways we become more active. So
Comments?
yeah, go ahead. I actually wanted to turn the mic over to you because you're up on so many things that we've discussed today, Keith, and I want Gary to know who you are, even if he can't see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm N3IM. I think Bob would appreciate that call sign for CW. Anyway, I'm a retired boarded internal medicine doctor, ER doctor, who retired just before COVID. And in some ways, I thank the Lord for that. In other ways, I wished I had been in the ER at that time. But anyway, a couple comments. There's also something that's coming up that I've noticed a lot of activity on that I'm not sure how to set up. But anyway, it's called the All-Star Node. And it's also a text-oriented ham radio communication that goes through various, you can tell it which node you want to go to, and through various repeated all-star nodes, it'll get to where it needs to be. And but I don't know much about that right now. And going back to the World Radio League, if you look on YouTube, he has some YouTube videos on his software and just talks about it if you wanted to take a look at those. YouTube has really kept me very much in the concept of modern day ham radio. If you realize I was first licensed in 1973, so a lot of things have advanced remarkably beyond what we started out with. And it's quite interesting to follow. And there's a lot of information available, and either by reading or by watching YouTube videos or what have you, to stay in touch with what's going on. And to get back to the mesh thing, I live in the mountains of Pennsylvania, so mesh has not been real active here that I'm aware of, because you obviously need to have nodes up on the mountains that are going to be able to translate and go back and forth. And I know that the Egos got involved with mesh, and one of the guys fractionated off, and that's where mesh core comes from. And I understand there might be some ego problems with mesh core now, so kind of interesting. Jay and I were right across the aisle from Spec 5 with their mesh network stuff, and that's how we got that's how Jay kind of got interested in mesh, was last year, and then this year, and realizing there's a place for it. So anyway, that's my history, and those are my comments.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I mean, Keith. You know, in just a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Gary so he can ask questions of us. But I did want to say we do have a member. His name is Gordon Gibby. He's a retired GIBBY, retired anesthesiologist. And he hasn't been active. He's a very active ham, and he's all about emergency communications. And I think he's got 15 publications on Amazon. I'd love to get him involved, but I know for years he's already been doing the mesh network. Ham radio mesh network. I don't know if he's setting up his own or how he's doing it, but there's so many resources out there. I see Bob is posting here if you can bring up the chat section here. He's giving links for SOTA. There's summits on the air. And by the way, Bob, don't come to Florida to do SOTA. You know, if you go to South Florida and go up I-95, there's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 mountains that all smell their trash heaps where they put soil on top. So the only problem is they're all called Mount Trashmore. So I don't know which one you would go to if I say go to Mount Trashmore. That's the Miami in me, having grown up there, even though I've been up in North Florida since 17 years old. But Bob's given some excellent links, the WinLink. And Gordon is very familiar with WinLink. We need to corral Gordon. But one other reason why I mentioned Gordon, because I've asked him to help me at the university, being the trustee at the University of Florida. We're trying to get kids back in, but also support the hospital in terms of emergency communication. And being that he's been very active with all this, he's a reservoir of information, and hopefully we can get him. But the one thing he requested of me and my students, and I'll have a hard time getting students involved in this because we're really down in numbers right now, is to do the federal training, to go through with all the emergency management training courses. So I told him that I would go ahead and do that. Again, it's hard to be a jack of all trades. And if you're an amateur radio and you're a DXer and that's what you enjoy, well, time's disappearing for DX, but one more country for honor roll. I'm happy with 10-band DXCC. I'd rather now expand my horizons, like Keith said. Try something new. It's good for your brain. It's good for amateur radio. Good for attracting younger people. So that's something we might want to tie in Gordon's efforts in the Gainesville area, or Gary, your friend's efforts in the Utah area as resources on our website. Why should everybody always reinvent the wheel? Why should we be networking with other organizations that offer all these services? And Bob just posted the FEMA courses that you need to take, all being free online, and you can do them in an afternoon. Well, I didn't realize you're much smarter than me, Bob. I don't know if I can get through everything in an afternoon. The neuropsychologists must be pretty sharp with all your neurons clicking. Mine are starting to wear out. It's the CW you're doing. Yeah, I'm convinced that CW made me intellectually advanced when I was a teenager, but unfortunately I stopped doing it regularly, and those pathways are starting to wane. I need to get started high-speed CW again. Go ahead, Bob. You wanted to say something? They give the mic to Henry.
I was just laughing, but I don't have the link for FEMA. 100, 200, 700, and 800 are the basic courses for OXCOM. Horrible acronym, auxiliary communications for working with government agencies, and they're mind-numbing. All I can say.
How numbing could it be if you did it in one afternoon?
Well, I don't know. I had to do them again. They said, "Well, you're such an old guy. You got to do them again." And oh, it was so hard. CW and we did a presentation on this. I actually have real-time fMRI studies of guys copying and gals copying CW, and it lights up all of the auditory speech pathways in the brain, the same one for spoken speech, and it increases sizes of the hippocampus and amygdala. I could go on and on. Chip knows this, but I won't.
Why don't we do a special evening program and do it on Zoom only, and then we'll make a recording, and that will be something that will get a lot of hits on YouTube. So thank you for mentioning that. We can all chip in. You can do that with others that have similar. I know there were others in Marco that do. So please do start to put together a little committee for that as time allows to do an evening presentation. I think Manir was interested in that, and 3PQ, and there's others.
Sure, I'll be happy to do this, or head up or help head up a portable committee. And seems a lot of us were
not just a portable committee, but what about Morse code?
Yeah, what about Morse code? And I think a lot of us are in this.
When Manir being a neurologist,
yeah.
A medical. We can have an evening medical discussion about it, where you can show all the slides, and since it's on Zoom, we can share our screens and then give that to the public and to the amateur radio community. Just think about that in a little insert into QST. So the Medical Amateur Radio Council did a program on the health advantages of CW. Here's the link. And just getting those 2 lines in QST, what a benefit that would be to the amateur community.
Oh yeah, happy to do it. And we have sort of, like I say, done stuff. Actually, this is a real weird tangent, but that's my brain. Got some of the original the Germans back World War I and before were doing hardcore research in Gestalt psychology and learning CW. The Beagle, B-I-G-L. Anyway, none of this had ever been, this came up with the Long Island Club, none of this had ever been translated. I'm still a member of the Royal Society of Medicine in London. Long story. But Lillian, our research librarian, was able to go back to the rare books collection at the Royal Society to get these German articles from 1919, 1920 on how the real hardcore Gestalt psychologists in Germany were looking at who would be a good CW operator and how to train them. And they had never been translated, and I paid for some, LICW paid for some, so we actually translated these articles into English for the first time. But I have ownership and I'm happy to share these. There's still some that haven't been translated. If any of the Marco members are good in German and technology, happy to send them to see if they want to translate them in their spare time, which is also a good brain exercise.
Can AI translate papers?
Well, we tried that, Chip, and so we tried Google, but I haven't tried the new one. Sometimes we were getting really good stuff, and sometimes just gibberish. But which I'm not up on AI. Are you using chat?
I'm not either. I'm just wondering if they're some of the newer ones that they brag they can do nearly anything, and I have heard of them translating papers from one language to another.
That's a good point. We tried Google.
There's Stuart, wasn't there a medical AI program that might help with that?
I don't think it's ready for prime time. I think you still have to pay to get a proper translation, but that changes week to week.
Guys, this is getting on 2 hours now. I want to give Gary the opportunity to ask questions before we bring it to a close. And you know, it's nice that we'll have an evening event about Morse code. Bob, I can see it's going to be a 2 hour. There's so much stuff to talk about. You get you and Monair and anybody else, Chip involved, and psychiatrists, psychologists, neurologists. It's going to be quite a productive discussion, especially with your involvement in the Long Island CW group. So thank you for, maybe you could start thinking about that, brainstorming it with Alana, and email Monair and ask him. And then once you get enough together, we'll go ahead and set up a date for that.
Cool.
And then we can put it in the ether ahead of time and advertise it. So now we're not going to be able to do that. So for this edition, we only have 2 weeks presentation. But maybe by the next quarter or 3 months when we put out the ether, we'll be ready to do that for later in the year. Okay, thank you, Gary. What time is it in Ghana right now, Gary?
Currently it's just before 5 o'clock p.m. So it's almost 1700.
Okay.
I'm on Greenwich Mean Time here, which, by the way, I found out there is another definition here of GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. It's called Ghana Maybe Time. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't.
That's cute. So tell us a little bit about, are there any questions, things that you can see that we've talked about that would be helpful to some of your efforts? And what's the potential for us through the church to have other people in similar capacities in Africa to help, form maybe a group to support some of the medical communication needs in African countries?
The church itself has a large communications program, and they actually have their own nets on ham radio, but not every congregation or ward has that set up. I'll have to investigate that further, especially here. I've got to stop into the National Communications Authority here in Takoradi and see if they actually exist, because I cannot get anybody to respond to me for anything here. So it's been frustrating to even try and get a license here in Ghana because I can't get the people to respond. Pardon? Say that again.
Does somebody need a comment, or was that just something picked up on the mic? Mike might have just been an errant pickup.
That could be. So I'll check into that more. Communications definitely needs to be better here. But remember, Ghana really is kind of a third world country. A great deal of people live in tin shacks, and they still cook their breakfast and dinner over open fires. And my heart was saddened because they cut down a whole bunch of mahogany trees and turned them into firewood instead of furniture. So we look at that as that's really beautiful wood. Well, here it's another meal. So it is definitely third world, and most of Ghana is jungle. So we have all kinds of stuff, including, as our mission president says, a spawn of Satan called mosquitoes. Malaria is a big problem here, and that's part of my job, is to keep the missionaries from getting malaria. So we use a lot of doxycycline here to prevent malaria. So I've become somewhat of an expert. So I don't have any real questions because you and I have talked a little bit over email, and I've read a lot of the stuff online. With my background, I can figure things out fairly quick. For those of you that don't know me, Jay's kind of got my bio. I started my medical career as in the Salt Lake County Sheriff Search and Rescue Unit as an EMT back in the mid 80s, 84 actually. And I was on the mountain rescue team and the dive rescue team, and eventually took over the dive rescue team and ran that for many years, and still participated with mountain rescue. Very high angle, complicated stuff. Then I went to PA school and graduated in 91. So I was a PA for a long time, retired the end of 2024. then got a call to go here. So would I do this for a living? No. But somebody higher up than me wants me here. So it's been interesting, but I've been involved initially in family practice, but most of my career was complicated internal medicine, and I spent several years working in vascular and general neurology. So a lot of that stuff that you talk about, the brain and that, I find very interesting. It's been a fascination of me most of my career. So, and I retired from search and rescue. I'm getting too old to climb up mountains and go through filthy canals and really nasty places. I don't look forward to getting in a raw sewage pond again to recover a body. So,
Well, thank you, Gary. There was a post here from in the chat. Stuart mentioned that on our YouTube channel, we did have a program called The Brain, Aging, and Neuroplasticity. And as we probably remember, Bob, from that particular program, there was, and this was Munir's interest, as you network with him. He also wanted to talk about and maybe do a program on music and neuroplasticity and the relationship between CW and music in terms of some of the commonalities of what the activity, what it does for the brain. So as you're talking to Munir, if you could also mention that. If we make a YouTube video and we just do CW and neuroplasticity, it's not going to get the same search as you said music, CW, and neuroplasticity. So we need to be thinking of ways that the general public is going to find these videos, as well as the healthcare community, obviously. Just different streams here, purpose.
Well, CW is music to some of us, but
but the effect on the brain,
Yeah, can I ask Gary? Wow, Gary, fascinating, especially search and rescue and all that stuff. But I'm wondering, since you're in Africa, and there's been a lot of press now about Ebola, the tropical diseases, hemorrhagic viruses. Are you dealing with any of that? And should we be concerned about that as another pandemic? I mean, that's a loaded question, but
no. That's in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a little bit in Uganda. So that's quite a ways from here. I don't deal with that, although I have to follow that. I have two missionaries that'll finish their missions and go home in July, and they both live in Congo. So I have to follow that carefully to see where the outbreaks are. Now, they're in the capital in the far south, and they haven't had any show up there. So right now they're safe. But if all of a sudden they have Ebola show up there, that's a problem. And the version of Ebola that hit, there is no treatment and there is no vaccine for it. The vaccines for Ebola are for different strains, and the treatments are for different strains. So they're madly trying to work on it. But Ebola is one of those that is contagious, not airborne, but by contact. All body fluids contain the virus for a person who's sick, but it's not contagious until they have symptoms. So I follow that very, very closely because we see tropical disease, malaria. I haven't seen a lot with our missionaries because they realize I'm very passionate about them taking their medication every day to prevent it. But I watch that carefully because the ones who have to go home, if it shows up in their hometown, the last thing I want to do is send them home to an Ebola outbreak. It's not pandemic right now. It's still isolated to specific areas. And pandemic, I know a fair amount about. Back in, well, many years ago, most of you'll remember when H1N1 hit, the flu. I was on the committee with the state of Utah to design Utah's flu pandemic protocols. And now, at least the last I heard, 32 of the 50 states use our protocols. took us 4 years to develop that and kind of put it as a quasi test out there and see how everything fit. But so I've been involved in pandemic protocol development. Took 4 years to do that. And having been through it, it takes that much time to really look at it and put everything in place. So right now, it's not on a pandemic level, but it is getting bigger. And this particular virus, 1 in 3 people that get it will die from it no matter what you do. So it is pretty devastating. It's not the worst strain, but the worst strain, we have vaccines and we have treatments. This one, all you can do is supportive care. Give them IVs, keep them hydrated, and wait till the body knocks it out, or they die, one of the two.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank
Now
you.
it's-
Thank you for the work you're doing and for that information. That's fascinating.
With the mRNA and the quick turnaround they had with COVID, and I know politically mRNA was not exactly the favorite subject of the current administration. I was just wondering if the potential for a development to come up with something that can assist with that particular.
The answer is yes, and they are working on it currently, but they figure it's still that the Ebola virus is a very funny virus, and it's not as simple as influenza to figure out. But they said it's probably going to be a few months before they have an effective vaccine against this strain of Ebola.
Thank you.
So-
for that information. There's hope. There's hope, but it can spread a lot before that. And so with the third fatalities, it's
Yeah, hopefully they can contain it. The problem is people get scared and they say, well, if I get out of here, I won't get it. Well, they're already got the sniffles. So now they're contagious. So they get out of there and they spread it to other areas. So the best way to stop it is contain it and keep it from getting outside where it is now.
well, you don't want it in the United States because we know what the opinion of containing things are after.
Well, right now, if you come from one of the areas, even close to one of those areas, your flight will go into one of 3 cities and you will be screened. So the United States and the CDC has already taken that into consideration. And if you're coming from an airport or your travel has got you anywhere near the outbreak areas, you will only have 3 choices to land in the United States because all 3 are set up to screen for Ebola, and you will not be allowed out of quarantine until they screen you.
Well, if it ever did,
Everybody wants to know what are those 3 cities?
Uh,
Atlanta was one.
Atlanta is one, New York is one, and I think Chicago, but don't quote me on that.
Was Stewart, is it Chicago?
No, it's Houston.
Houston? Okay, that's right, it is Houston.
Okay.
So they're screening. If you come from Congo, any place in Congo, Uganda, South Sudan, you're going through one of those airports and you will be in quarantine until they determine that you're completely negative.
Well, if it did escape, nobody believes in mandatory masking anymore. So
Yeah.
Yeah, then
well,
you
it's
wonder
not
about,
airborne anyway; it's contact borne. But so it'd be probably more isolating somebody. People don't believe in confinement even more than masking. So
Jay, back during the late 1970s, there was a screening protocol proposed for Chicago O'Hare International Airport. And I thought about volunteering to be a screener, but in the end, I decided not to volunteer.
well, don't move to Atlanta or Houston because they're going to recruit you.
So the question is, how good do you look in Tyvek?
Yeah, I went through that with the COVID because I was involved in direct patient care of COVID patients. I don't know how I look, but I never got COVID from a work-related activity.
Yeah, and I did mobile wound care for a while, and if they had a bug of any kind, I had to dress up and then throw everything in the garbage, and all the PP personal protective equipment that I had on had to go in their garbage can. So I got used to that, dressing outside, getting it all off outside and throwing it away without touching the outside of it.
Thank you.
It's been suggested that you have a helper for donning and doffing the PPE.
I agree with that, but it was just me. I didn't have a helper.
Yeah, we used to go through that in the emergency room about every 6 months that we'd had to don that type of equipment just in the event that something would happen. We never had anything that happened, but I realized the difficulty of getting into and out of those uniforms because every 6 months we had to do it. So we knew
Yep.
what we were doing.
Well, one of the areas I was involved in, I'm also a certified hazmat diver. And we actually had the advantage because when we had to recover bodies from raw sewage ponds, we got to keep everything on, didn't have to smell anything till we got decontaminated by the hazmat unit with the fire department. So I'm used to that. And our gear for scuba is a lot more detailed. It's also a lot heavier.
Maybe we'll do a program on that one day. Show all your photographs if they took any of you. I can imagine being in raw sewage or having to be fully immersed in that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun, but it's the poor guys when we handed the bodies over the side that had to smell it and take it over to the coroner's wagon and stay in the Class A hazmat corridor. We got to get out and keep everything on and breathe nice, clean, pure air until we got decontaminated. So we had the advantage, even though you're literally swimming in crap.
Well, thank you for everything you have done in the past and you currently do. And you're obviously a very dedicated person to your craft and your profession and your communities. Thank you. You know, it's been, let's see, it's 10 after 1. I think we set a record, by the way, Gary. Thank you for helping us. We usually don't do them this long, but we should have a YouTube video. I'll go and double check. I haven't stopped the Zoom recording yet, so we should have the Zoom recording and be able to make that into a video. And we'll introduce it in such a way and title it that maybe it will entice people that are interested in emergency communications and people that are in fire departments and EMTs and people that aren't hams already. We're trying to get that magic combination. And hopefully all of us here will find that it's a resource for others that we know that might be interested in that. And this is the way you spread the word and develop new amateur radio operators, but regardless of being amateur radio operators, it's a community service to those that are in the emergency services. So thank you for everybody that's here today, Gary. It's nice having I guess it's an eyeball QSO if it's on Zoom, but not the same as an in-person eyeball QSO. But when you get back from Africa in November 2027, we'll make sure to find a way. And by the way, before I close it, we're trying to reinvigorate our west of the Mississippi activity. We used to have a lot of activity from out west. I'm trying very hard to get a whole new group of interested people, talented individuals, and maybe next year have our annual meeting because our presence in California out west somewhere. So more on that in the future. Let me say 7-3 for now to everybody. Thank you for everybody being here. I'm going to close the recording right now. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you very much for participating with us. We hope that you found this very interesting and helpful. Our website is healthcarehams.org. Healthcarehams, all one word, .org. You already know, since you're watching on YouTube, the YouTube channel. So we look forward to hearing from you. Contact us through the website. And goodbye for everybody until next week.